So you were talking about arriving here in August of 1943 in Pasco.
Yeah, we came to Pasco, and our instructions were to go to the employment agency. So we did, oh my word, hot and windy, and I thought we'd come to the end of the world when we got here. So these friends that had come previously had written to us and told us to, gave us some instructions. So we head out toward Hanford, and we come to a farmhouse called Barnett's Farm, and it had a big sign in the near the mailbox. So we turned in there and found our friends, and we never did go to Hanford to the trailer court. We stayed right there. So we had eggs and milk and everything right from the farmer, and it was perfect. We weren't out in the hot sun. It was really neat. And the fellows went to work, and we stayed here. And my son was 2 years old, and I was pregnant with the next one. No hospital in Richland. No hospital at Hanford at that time. So we went, she was born in Lady of Lourdes, and Lady of Lourdes was, well, everybody out at Hanford had to go there, the people that were having babies, and they were in the hallways. I mean, every spot was taken for those in the maternity ward. And we stayed here till my husband got called to the service. So we moved to Sunnyside to be near relatives, because I didn't want to go clear back to Wisconsin where my folks were with 2 little ones. So we went to Sunnyside, and so he was to report at the buses were taking him to Spokane, and when he got on the bus, they said that he was, because he had a family at home, it was near the end of the war by that time, so he didn't have to go. So we came back to Richland to work on the plant here.
And so what sort of work did your husband do?
He was a carpenter. So he worked building out there, and also then started building the homes here in Richland, because there was nothing here. When we came from Pasco that first day, there was a cow tethered down by Jackson's Tavern in Richland. And there was John Dam's grocery store and a bank and one other building of, can't remember what that was, but there were 3 buildings in the downtown area, and a few houses where the people lived here, you know. And this Mr. Barnett's farm out there, he had sold it to the government, but had gone to work for the government, so he got to stay in his home. So that's how come we rented space from him.
And so you stayed there until you moved to Sunnyside.
Yes.
And when you came back from Sunnyside, where did you move to?
By that time, we got a 3-bedroom prefab. So we were in that a short time, and by then there were trading houses. If you lived in one, you could trade it, or it was before houses were sold. So we traded and got the B house that we're in now. So we've been in that house for over 60 years, but we remodeled it into a single unit.
So you mentioned first arriving and the heat.
Oh.
Any other first impressions of the place?
First impressions of this area?
Yeah.
It was beastly hot. It was around 100 degrees, and we knew that we were headed for our trailer court out there at Hanford, which wasn't very inviting, but we didn't have to go. But there was nothing here. I just thought we'd come to the end of the world. It was just, couldn't hardly wait for this job to get over with so we could go home again. Never, ever expecting to stay, you know. So.
And then you said your husband, after the war, was involved in building homes.
Yes, they were building. I don't know exactly when they started building the houses here in Richmond, but he built. The prefabs were moved in kind of as prefabricated houses, but then he worked on the other houses also. And then when the war was over and the houses were sold, he went into business and he put basements under existing houses. So it was quite a lucrative business because every house in Richland had a half basement. So he was a busy guy.
So you said you had one child already, and then you had a second child.
Yeah.
What sort of community was Richland like, as you know, into the late 1940s, early 1950s for you and your family?
Well, in the 40s, when we first got here, we had to stand in line for everything: the grocery store, post office, everything. And as it was later on, when the town began to develop, then there was Central United Protestant Church. I think the city fathers thought there would be one church that would serve everybody, but that didn't happen. They were the Catholics and the Lutherans and the Baptists, if I remember correctly, wanted their own, so they branched off from this and started their own. So schools were built, churches were built. It really wasn't. It really was a nice place to live. So
you saw a lot of growth taking place.
Oh yes, from the original houses here in town to the houses that were built, the alphabet houses, and then of course later on when everybody owned their homes, then people started building some of their own homes. But there was an awful lot of remodeling, and it began to look like a regular town instead of a government town, you know.
Right. And at some point in the 1950s, the city became an independent city, right? It's from the federal government control.
Yeah.
That at all any...
I remember we had our first mayor was a lady. I don't remember what her name was, but. Yeah, it began to be a normal town.
And
schools, churches, stores. It was.
Were you able to? Did you rent your house initially?
Yes.
Were you able to buy it at some point? Or?
Yes, and in the '60s, the houses were sold, so you had a chance to buy your house, and we did. And in fact, we bought some of the prefabs too, and they wanted them kind of. They wanted them moved, so we bought some of those and moved them out, set them up, and I think they were in the Highlands of Kennewick. But you know, those prefabs are still standing. Some people have put basements under them. All of them needed foundations because it was temporary. But the alphabet houses were more permanent because they had basements.
And you mentioned Central United Protestant Church being established. Do you remember when that was? Around when that was?
No, it must have been soon. And I really don't remember, but that was the first one. Mm-hmm. And then so then it branched off like South Side and North Side and the different. Some are Baptist, some are the CUP was Methodist based, so other churches, other denominations began to build their own. But it must have been in the '60s.
And I imagine there must have been people coming here from all over the United States.
Oh, of course. And when they had the termination winds, carloads of people would leave. When we first got here, we were really lucky. We had a trailer house. because some people were living in chicken coops, some people were living in cardboard boxes. I mean, until the barracks got built out there. I mean, there was nothing here. So we felt real fortunate to have a house to crawl into.
As you mentioned, a lot of people sort of came and then left, stayed for a while and left, either because of the termination winds or whatever.
There was
What made you stay? What made you and your family stay?
Yeah, we stayed. We're still here.
And was it just because your husband had employment? Is that one reason why you stayed?
Well, we liked it, and he was busy. He worked at Hanford, building that, and then he worked on the houses here in Richland. And then when they were sold, why, he went into business for himself, so we just stayed. And we like it.
I wonder if you recall any sort of community events that happened in Richland during that time in the 40s, 50s?
Well, we had Frontier Days. That was the big thing. Parades and celebrities coming, but that was one of the things. But I don't know. You kind of had to make your own fun because there was nothing here. So, and we took advantage of the river. We had a boat, and we had a boat dock down at the river, and our kids grew up down there, and everybody was in the same boat. We had square dances because we had to make our own fun. So it was, and some of the square dances were held in the schools. I remember we square danced at Jefferson, and there were other square in the '60s, early '70s. That was kind of the thing. There were square dancers all over. I mean, that's kind of faded out, but there was one a big one in Kennewick that we attended. So it was kind of a do-it-yourself entertainment program.
And what was Richland like in terms of a place to raise children?
It was great. Great place to raise kids. There was schools and churches and Boy Scouts and the river, and our kids were so busy they didn't have time to get in trouble. And there was, remember, this town was all young people. We all had children. It was, we just did our own thing, our own clubs, and it was great to raise kids. It was. By that time we had a swimming pool, and this town was really conducive to children because we all had kids.
You mentioned when you first arrived that there was only a few businesses downtown. Were there places to shop and things like that, or at what point did those things come in?
Well, there was nothing here when we came. There was John, like I said before, the one little grocery store, and you stood in line around the block to get into the store even. And then pretty soon there was grocery stores started popping up. There was, and the uptown started to grow. Businesses came in. And I think that was probably in the '60s also. I don't really know. But I remember a grocery store in our neighborhood over on Gothel's, and so. And then in the downtown area there was a department store. I can't remember the name of it, but and a few restaurants started to happen.
Let's see. So you came in 43. So you were here then. Were you here or in Sunnyside when the war ended then?
But we were in Sunnyside when the war ended. And up until that time, we really didn't know what it was. The secret was really held good. We really didn't know. But the day that the war ended, the farmers came in from Sunnyside, and they threw watermelons, and the downtown area in Sunnyside was just a big mess. And the armory came out with hoses to clean everything down. I mean, there was quite a celebration. Why they were smashing fruits and vegetables, I don't know, but they were.
So it wasn't until then that you and your husband found out what.
That's
what
when we
really
realized what was going on out here. Mm-hmm.
So when you first came here, you just knew it was something for the war? Is that...
That's it. It was a war effort over here, but we didn't know. We suspected, but the secret was really kept, really good. And it was when we first came, when the mountain home job was done. Friends were here that I don't know how they found out, but they wrote to us. But the ration board didn't know there was anything going on. It was a secret then too. You know, it was very well kept, this secret.
Do you remember what your response was when you found out, or what you thought?
Well, no, not really. It was the war effort, and it was. I remember when we first came here, how angry some of the farmers and some of the people were that their farms were taken away from them, and so forth. But and all the promises that were made, I hope they're carried through.
And I was going to ask you that when your husband, obviously 1943 is very early in the construction of the project and so forth, and he was working in construction, right, on the project.
When he first came, he worked out at Hanford building that, and then he came into town to build the houses. So when they realized that it wasn't going to be a temporary thing, that all these people that were here and staying needed a place to live, so they built the houses. And then, of course, when they were sold, then he stayed here and put basements under most, and did a lot of remodeling too.
When he was working out at the site, the Hanford site, how did he get to the site? Were there buses?
Buses. There were buses. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was obviously a very secret, sort of secure place. Did he have to have a clearance to be able to work out there?
Yeah. He had to have a clearance, and he had a Q clearance because he was in all the areas. And later on, in the late 60s, I went to work for the government. I worked at the federal building. I had a Q clearance also. And it was interesting, in 1969, another couple and I were going, another couple and Palmer and I were going to Europe because our neighbors that lived, he was Atomic Energy Commission, was in the embassy in Austria, and they invited us to come. So two couples of us went over there and a Q clearance came into play because before I left, the security called me in and interviewed me to tell me what to do in case I got stopped over there or captured or whatever. I didn't know anything, of course, that was going on out. But that's how careful they were. Just let us know what to do in case something like that did happen.
Right. And so your job at the federal building was with the Department of Energy, or?
No, my job at the federal building, there was a little post office set up taking care of the Hanford mail, and I was in charge of the certified and registered mails. Mm-hmm. So all of the Hanford mail came through our place before it went into the post office. I imagined a check, another check.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you have been in Richland for the most part since 1943, other than a little bit of time in Sunnyside. You've seen a lot of changes.
Oh, yes.
What do you think has changed the most, or what have been the most significant changes you've seen?
What do you think?
What do you think have been the most significant changes that you've seen since you've been here?
Well, probably the development of the town. It turned into we have everything we need here. We have stores, and we've taken it. The city and everybody's taken advantage of the river. It's just a nice little town that's developed from all of this.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about? Any stories you have from those early years, or memories that you'd like to share that you haven't shared?
Stories. Well, the interesting story was when it came time for this baby to be born. No hospital in Hanford, no hospital in Richland. So we went over to Hanford at Lady of Lords, and she was a preemie baby. So there was no way they could keep that baby in the hospital. There were babies in the hallways and everything. So the nuns gave us instructions of what to do with this tiny little 3-pound baby. So we came home, and my husband built a shelter in our bedroom made of cheesecloth with a window in, so people couldn't get to her, like relatives and friends that came to see her. And our instructions were to take care of this child with as least bit of handling that possible, because it took too much energy from her. So she grew into we did it. We followed all the instructions that they gave us and took care of this baby at home. And but it was pioneer days, it seemed like, in those days. It was just you did the best you could with everything. And then it came time for Paul, our son, to go to school. The neighbors next door, the children were going on a bus to a Lutheran school in Kennewick. So they took him along on the bus every morning. He brought back, so his first year of school was over there. And then we moved into the B house where we are now, and he went to Jefferson, and because the schools in those days were just barely being built, and so this was an easy way for him to get a good start.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much a brand new school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's been great.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for coming in today and talking to me.
Well,
sharing your stories.
Okay. I hope I gave some information that you could use. I don't know. I hope this fellow over here can edit this real good, so I don't look like an idiot.
Boy, I'll give you my word.
Okay, good. Make me look good.
You got it.
Well, thanks very much, Lucille. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Was it okay?
Oh, yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Okay.